Hello, welcome to today's session on ArcGIS for Power BI. My name is Andrew Stauffer, Product Manager of the Microsoft Integration Suite of products here at Esri. With us today for the demonstration is Anthony Latini, who is a Product Engineer on ArcGIS for Power BI. Now, before we get started, one of the things we like to talk about is across many organizations, every employee has access to a Microsoft 365 account. This account gives them all of the most powerful business applications used around the world today, from Excel and PowerPoint to SharePoint, Office, and Teams. These applications become part of our everyday work lives. With an ArcGIS account, we can help enhance the experience of using these applications, geo-enabling data, sharing it across the ArcGIS system, and making it available within other applications, websites, or communication tools like Microsoft Teams, so we can help provide better response and business decisions across our organization. Now, ArcGIS for Power BI is a joint effort with Esri and Microsoft. On a regular basis, our Power BI development team and the Power BI development teams from Microsoft get together to work on issues as well as address future capabilities that our shared customers are asking for. And Microsoft has chosen to embed and ship our visual in the box with their product, recognizing Esri as the leader and best of breed when it comes to spatial analysis and spatial visualization. Now, as I mentioned, ArcGIS for Power BI comes in the box. This means whether you've downloaded the free version or are paying for the pro version, or even using Power BI Report Server, the ArcGIS for Power BI visual is available. It helps create map visualizations that link to the other visuals that you put within your report that help analyze or provide BI drill down capabilities across these different visuals, such as graphs, maps, and charts. So we take the data that comes and has been loaded in Power BI, and we're able to go ahead and display this on the map. We can go ahead and match it based on an XY location. We can geocode it if it has an address, or if it has a boundary, we can go ahead and do some boundary matching, so whether it's by zip code or county. And when we do that, we really bring this BI data to life on a map, so it becomes a little bit more interactive in the real world that we're comfortable working in. Now, I mentioned when ArcGIS for Power BI ships in the box, this means that there's standard capabilities for anybody who does not have an ArcGIS account. This is free to use for anybody who's using Power BI. We have a certain number of geo searches or address matches that we can do, drive times, and boundary matching. Now, if we want to go ahead and enhance our experience with an ArcGIS identity, we see that the amount of geocoding or geosearching that we can do is greatly increased to 10,000 points per map and on a per month basis. Additional drive times, more infographic variables, the boundary matching, which is very key to a lot of reports, increases up to 15,000. We're able to access all of the content from the Living Atlas. We can add the Esri World Traffic Service, and there's an additional capability that we'll talk about later that with an ArcGIS identity enables you to embed your reports in other web applications such as SharePoint, or publish it to web where the report becomes available to anybody on the web. So at the end of 2020, we put out a pretty significant release, and we're going to talk now about some of the new features that we just came up with. So first of all, we went from ArcGIS Maps for Power BI to ArcGIS for Power BI. I'm just simply dropping the Maps section there. The business model underwent a significant change, and we supported a well-requested capability to join Power BI data to our spatial data. So as long as we have a common field there, we can join non-spatial data to spatial assets. And then support for report server, which happened at the end of January 2021, and multiple improvements and changes that helped improve the overall experience. So first off, let's talk about licensing. We made some significant licensing changes, and if we look at ArcGIS Online right now, in the past, you used to have to purchase an add-on license, but that is no longer needed to create or view reports within Power BI. Any ArcGIS Online account that is of a creator level or higher, so creator user type or GIS professional, can go ahead and design reports and use the ArcGIS for Power BI visual within their report. Now, if all of the data is publicly available within the report, no additional accounts are needed for viewers. But if there is private data coming from the GIS, then we will go ahead and use any ArcGIS account as a viewer. So if I create a map, or I create a report and has the visual in it, and there's a layer coming, but it's restricted to a certain group within my organization, everybody will have to log in, and those who have access will be able to see that layer. Those who don't will not be able to load the visual. So it's providing this level of security. Now, as I mentioned before, if this is a public-facing report, something I want to put out there, and it's generated with all public content, no sign-in is required, and we'll display all of the data. Now, this is a little bit different with ArcGIS Enterprise. With 10.8 and 10.81, there was already some mechanisms in place that we needed to work with. So it still holds true that as a report designer, you need to have a creator level or higher. A viewer level or higher is needed to view reports, again, only if there's private data in there. And at 10.8 and 10.81, we still do require the add-on license to be supported for these versions. Now, the good news is that this add-on license does not come at a cost to you. It is something that you can request from customer service, and we will issue those add-on licenses to you at no cost. Now, if you're running an older vintage of ArcGIS Enterprise, like at 10.7.1, creator level or higher is still needed, and a viewer level or higher is needed to view, as long as the data is private. There's no request for an add-on license. So 10.7.1 should be able to work immediately. 10.8, 10.8.1 request the add-on license, we'll send it to you, and you should be up and ready. Now, another really big feature that's been asked about is embedding reports or publishing these reports to the web. Now, some of the requirements that we have around embedding is that you must be an ArcGIS user that's creating the report. So this isn't available for the standard, with the standard capabilities. And I mentioned briefly before that there's three ways that we geo-enable data. We can show an XY coordinate on the map visual, we can match an address, or we can match a boundary. With this initial release to support embedded and published to web, we only support Power BI data that contains an XY location. If the report contains private or secure information, the viewer of your report must sign in to the visual to go ahead and unlock or authenticate against ArcGIS and show that they have access to view those secured layers. Now, published web, same thing. It's not available with the standard. It's only available with an ArcGIS account. It must be XY locations if we want to go ahead and share that out. And all data must be public. So when we think about published web, you're really saying, I'm going to make it available for the whole world. It makes sense that all the data would have to be public as well. Now, let's turn it over to Anthony Latini for a demo as he walks us through all of these new capabilities.
As mentioned in the previous slides, working with ArcGIS for Power BI is incredibly easy, and it's easy to get started as well, whether you're in Power BI Desktop or the counterpart of Power BI Online. There's nothing to install or download from the Visual Store. We live right here in the Visualizations pane, and all you have to do to get started is to click on it, whether it's on an already existing report page or if it's blank, and our visual will show up here on the report page. There are a few different options with getting started. You have the ability to sign in with your ArcGIS Online account. You can sign in using your ArcGIS Enterprise account, or if you want to get started without signing in to any of those items, you can just start dragging data in. So for example, if I have X and Y here, I can take X and put it in the longitude field and then latitude, and I can get started right away. But if you choose to sign in to ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, it's as simple as clicking on the sign in button, and then you'll be prompted to sign in with your credentials. Now that I've signed in with ArcGIS Online, I can use my data that I've imported in Power BI Desktop. And as a quick note, in Power BI Desktop, you can have multiple data sources, whether it's from Excel, SQL Server, it's a CSV file, etc. In this particular demo, I'm using an Excel table that has some location-based data like addresses, postal codes, X and Y. For this, I'm just going to drag over X and Y like I did before for the standard user account. And there it is. My data is now on the map, and I can start interacting with this. I can use the different charts that I've created on this page here to filter out the data on my map. If I use the selection tools on the map here and I make this selection, it'll filter these items on the report. So what I'm going to do next is move into just some quick information about our map tools that we have here, and then also the formatting pane. I'm going to just put our map here into focus mode, which maximizes it and gives us a bit more room to play with on the report page. On the left-hand side of the map, we have a number of tools at our disposal. We have our selection tools, which you briefly just saw. We have the ability to search for an address or point of interest. So if I search for something like Esri here, and in my search results, I see Esri here in Chicago and Esri in Redlands, California. I'm going to use the one here in Chicago because that's in my current map view. And I see a pin appear here on the map. And in the formatting pane that I've opened on the side here, I had changed the pin color to be black just because that pops out a bit better on my light gray canvas based map. This color is for any pins that you do put on the map. These pins are not saved when the report is sent out to your consumers. It's just a way to help you see it better depending on what data you have sitting on your map. And like I said, I had picked black here because it stands out a bit more. I could have chosen orange, and then we see it pop up here as orange. With this pin, you can interact with it. You can drive other visuals on the report or on the map, and we can get into that a little bit later. I just briefly mentioned my base map or the background of the map, and I was using light gray canvas. And you may be asking yourself, well, how do I change it here out of our map tools? And what we can do is come to our map tools pane within the format settings, and I can turn on the base map icon. We see it pop up here on the left. And what this does, it gives you the ability to change basically the background of your map. Some base maps are better for showing points. Some base maps are better for showing polygons like zip codes or counties. So if I change to dark gray canvas here, we get a nice dark background. It makes these points pop out a bit more. You may want to use something creative like this modern antique map. May have to go in and change the colors here a bit on my points, but this allows you to pull in data from your organization if you're signed in with your ArcGIS Online or Enterprise account. If you're signed in as a standard user, you get 4 base maps out of the box. And when you sign in with your ArcGIS account, you get an additional 8 for a total of 12. So if you have nothing in your organization that you want to use, we do provide some Esri curated ones that may help you show your data in a better light. One last thing I'll mention as a report designer, if you do decide to keep this option in the on setting, when you distribute this report out to your consumers, they will have the ability to switch the base map on the fly. There are no changes that are saved. It's a read-only change, so it won't disrupt what you've done as the report designer, but your viewers or consumers may need to look at the data using a different background. So if they need to look at something using this human geography map, they can do it while it's in consumer mode. And then there'll be the ability to actually revert it back to what you had set. So if you'd set it to dark gray canvas and they had changed it, there's a little button that appears at the top for them to revert it back to the defaults. After changing your base map and getting a nice background, you may want to look at changing the style of the points. And we can do that coming off of our table of contents or layer list. So if I click this button here, there's our pin that we had searched for before, and I have the ability to hide that or show that. I can even remove it if I'd like to, or zoom to it or rename it. But here I have my coordinates. These are the X and Y's I put in the longitude and latitude fields. And if I click this context menu here for layer options and I click on symbology, we get the ability to style our data layer here. I can change it to be a heat map if I'd like. I can have it cluster the points. For now, I'm going to keep it on location only, and I'm going to change this to some diamonds here. Maybe I'll increase the size a bit. Well, it's a little too big. And maybe I'll use this yellow color. And as a background or an outline, I can put it as orange. That pops out a bit better. But this is your toolkit to change the style of your points or your polygons on the map. If you decide to add something to the color field, for example, I have a numeric value. We do a bit of what's called smart mapping or intelligent defaults, and we do this guesswork for you in the background here, and we can see that the map has already decided where there are different areas of, for this example, crime. So it's made it these darker colors, and it's made them pop out a bit. And I may want to change this back to white. Maybe I'll increase the size just a little bit here. So you have the ability to style your map based on colors that you set, or if you decide to add your own values in the size and color field wells, it'll do it for you automatically. So if I take a string, for example, and I drag it into the color field, these are now broken up into different categories. And maybe we'll put that as default so we can see it a bit better on the map here, and it makes more sense. And if I go back to my report like this, we can now break these up based on these categories. So there's all of my points in the south, and then next we have west. And if we look at the table of contents, the blues are in the west, and I have this in the west here. Moving down our list of icons here, we see this wrench, which is our analysis tools. And within this menu, we have a few different icons. We have things for infographics, reference layers, drive time, and find similar. For now, I'm going to click on this top one, which is infographics. And what this is a tool to basically add some additional data to your map, and you get some context about what's happening in a given area, about the general population. So for example, if I look at this USA demographics category here, and by the way, this comes in the box if you are a standard user or if you are signed in with your ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise account, everybody gets access to this tab, and it's 28 cards that are curated from Esri. So if I click on one of these here, or even two of them, I get these nifty cards on the side, and in the formatting pane, you can decide whether you want them on the left or the right. For now, we're going to leave them as the default. And if I start clicking on the map here, these start updating. And if I move around the map, I'm actually going to just make sure I uncheck this, the lock extent, so I can start moving around again. We can see that these numbers begin to update. And as long as you have something in view, these will update accordingly. You can even make selections against them. You can change the settings, whether you want to do as a radius or a drive time, and you can compare it to different statistics or demographics in the United States. If I make a selection here on these points, they update accordingly. And you can if you have different categories in here, like the population, it'll give you some more analysis about what's happening with the population within those selections. As an ArcGIS Online or Enterprise user, you do get access to world demographics, which unlocks thousands of other categories to choose from. We have things for spending, for health, crime, education. You also get access to world demographics as well. So if you have something that's based out of Australia, for example, you get a list of facts and infographics for Australia. If we head back to our analysis tools toolbox, we can continue to add context to our map by adding a demographic or reference layer. When I open this tool up, we're presented with the demographics tab of this widget. And much like the infographics tab, there are two different tiers of support here. There's this demographics layer, and then you'll see things like ArcGIS and Living Atlas. For our standard users, out of the box, you get a demographics list. There's 20 layers here from 2020 and 2016 to help you give some more context to your data. So if I add something like this population growth layer to my report here, it shows up on the screen, and I can start clicking around on this. So if I click this particular area here, I'll actually get a pop-up in this tract, and I'll get some information about what's happening here in this example, in this part of Chicago. And then within our selection, we'll actually get an update on the infographic card. So it's a nice way to put some context in your data and to give you a brief overview of what's happening in specific areas. In addition to demographic layers that are provided out of the box, we can also search for public ArcGIS content. This is available for standard users, as well as ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise users. If I do a search for US states, I will get a list of results that have been shared publicly throughout ArcGIS Online, and I can add any one of these to the map here. The same thing applies for the Living Atlas. This is available for ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise users if it is enabled in your organization. And you can search the Living Atlas, you can search by themes, and you can add those layers to the map as well. If we switch back to the ArcGIS tab, and you are signed in with your ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise account, you can access your content, your organization's content, their groups, your favorites, your own folders, and you can add these layers to the map as well. So anything you've created, whether it's in ArcGIS for Office or ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, you will be able to bring it in to ArcGIS for Power BI, and you can make use of your own content. In previous versions of ArcGIS for Power BI, a report designer could drive visuals on the report page using the Power BI data layer. This data layer can come from many different sources. In this example, I'm using an Excel table that contains my data. As you can see, the visuals are updating when I choose locations on the map. I can also filter locations on the map using the graphs and charts. In addition to filtering the Power BI data using the selection tools, we can make use of a reference layer to select the Power BI data within a given boundary. In this example, I'm selecting different zip codes, which then filter the Power BI dataset. In version 2020.4, we can use ArcGIS for Power BI to create a layer join between your ArcGIS reference layer and non-spatial attributes in your dataset. If your Power BI data does not contain spatial information, such as addresses or coordinates, you can link data attributes from Power BI to those from a reference layer added from ArcGIS to provide deeper insight into your data. You can join the data layer and the reference layer by linking common attributes in each dataset. To use the layer join feature, ensure that the ArcGIS reference layer contains attributes that match those in the Power BI dataset. The name of the attribute does not have to be identical, but the data type must be the same. You join numbers to numbers, strings to strings, and so on. To start, add the ArcGIS for Power BI visual to the report page. You can use Power BI Desktop or Power BI Online to create the map-enabled report. You can perform this layer join both with and without Power BI data. Next, drag a non-spatial attribute from the Fields pane to the Visuals Join field well. You can add up to 5 attributes to this field. As a general note, if the map does not contain a data layer with spatial information, the map appears empty. Next, add a reference layer from ArcGIS to your map. Ensure that the reference layer you choose contains attributes that match those in your Power BI dataset. Each reference layer can have its own layer join. In the layer list, click Layer Options to view the context menu and click Layer Join. The Layer Join pane appears. The data attributes you picked in the Join field appear on the left, and attributes in the reference layer appear in a drop-down menu on the right. From the drop-down menu, choose the reference layer attribute that most closely matches the Power BI attribute. You must join at least one attribute to create a join. If you placed more than one attribute in the Join field well, use the drop-down menus to match each attribute. You can match up to 5 attributes for each reference layer. When you've matched all the attributes, click Create Join. As you select locations on the Join reference layer, other visuals on the report with attributes that match those in the reference layer automatically update. If no match exists, a message appears stating that no results were found. You can also select items and other visuals on the report, and the map will immediately update to reflect those changes. When a reference layer has been joined to data attributes, a link icon appears in the Layers entry in the layer list. You can change the settings for the layer join at any time. In the Layer Join pane, click Remove Join. You can drag a new field from your Power BI data into the Join field well and match it with the corresponding attribute in the reference layer. You can also remove or select already existing attributes. Click Create Join, and the Layer Join will be updated with the new values. After you design a map-enabled report, you can use the Power BI Publish to Web feature to add it to a public website or blog article. You can also use the Power BI Publish to Web feature to embed it in a secure website or application outside the Power BI environment. Before you can publish the report to the web, run the Publish and Embed check on the Power BI visualization to ensure that all requirements are met. To check a map-enabled report for publishing or embedding, do the following. Create a report that contains an ArcGIS for Power BI map and save the report. With the ArcGIS for Power BI visual active, click Settings to view the Settings pane. In the Embed and Publish check category, click Validate. The check verifies that all requirements for publishing and embedding the map have been met. These include the following. Power BI location data is in latitude and longitude coordinates. For publishing, the map must only contain publicly accessible layers from ArcGIS, and no layers contain secured or premium content. In Embedded, you may need to sign into ArcGIS to view this content. Review the message that appears when the check completes. Layers that pass all requirements appear with a green checkmark. If an item does not meet the requirements, a red mark appears beside the item. Click Show Error Details to view information about the error. Correct errors in the map, save the report, and run the Embed and Publish check again. When the check completes successfully, a message appears stating that the map has passed and is ready to be published or embedded with the report. When you've created and checked your map-enabled report, publish it to the Power BI platform. In the Publish to Power BI pane, choose My Workspace and click Select. You may be prompted to replace an already existing report. When the report is successfully published, a confirmation message appears. Open the report in Power BI Online. To generate a secure embed link, click Share to view the context menu and select Embed Report. Choose SharePoint Online or Website or Portal. When the embed code is successfully generated, a confirmation appears, listing two options that you can use to embed the report in a website. Do one of the following. To embed a URL in an app, blog article, or other location, copy the link in the first field and paste it into the app or body of the article. To embed the report in a SharePoint site or web page, copy the iframe code from the second field. Optionally, resize the iframe to fit the page by moving the resize slider to the right. Paste the code into your web page and publish the page. So what I'd like to do now is actually use ArcGIS Maps for Power BI in a Power BI report page. As you can see, I have some information here on my second tab dealing with tree species and tree health and a tree map. So I thought it would be a good idea to show where these trees are growing, what health they're in, how many trees have been created over the last 20 years, what are some key influencers that have allowed these trees to grow or these specific types of trees to grow in certain areas. In this case, I'm using Brooklyn as my starting point, and there's some factors that go along with generating some London plant trees. But with that said, though, this isn't really painting a good picture as to where these trees are. I can see that we have um, quite a number of Norway maples in 1995, but that number seems to have dwindled a bit in 2015, and that these London planet trees have kind of taken over
in the space throughout New York City. But what would really help is if we actually see this on a map. Um, we can get some real benefits by using a map in our report, and by the time we've shared the report, we can actually see what these charts are doing. And it allows us to visually understand where these changes are occurring and actually use the visual to get some additional information using reference layers or infographic cards. So what I'm going to do now is actually switch to my second tab here. And as we can see, we have the same report, a little bit smaller on some of these visuals here because I made some room for our tree health maps from 1995 and 2015. So as it looks like, in 1995, we have a number of trees in the Bushwick area. If we hover over some of these points here, the blue represents good. We have excellent trees. We have some trees that are in poor health. I don't see any fair on this map. Those would be indicated by our yellow points, but we see a number of them in 2015. Now, what's interesting is that in 2015, these trees that were in excellent shape have now disappeared from the map in 2015. And I wonder what's causing this to happen. We can even filter some of these out if we look at our good trees here. We can see that a majority of good trees are actually based on these London planet trees. We have the maple Norways. We hover over here. We can see that there's a few other different species of trees, honey locust. It looks like this one's on the curb instead of being off the curb. If we go to the same set in 1995, our good trees here. There's quite a number of them. A lot of Norway maples, the London planet trees. So, what has changed between 1995 and 2015? First, what I want to do is change my filter here. I'm using this little filter on the right. It's looking at the good trees in 2015. But what I'd really like to do is actually use our fair filter here. I want to see if there's any differences or any patterns between 1995 and 2015. So at a first glance, I can see that all of the trees are in fact different health status. All the good have now turned to fair. We've even had some of the trees that were in poor health upgrade to fair. The excellent trees have definitely degraded over time and are now in this fair status. Uh, but if I had to take a guess as to what is happening here, um, uh, having lived in New York for quite some time and being extremely familiar with Brooklyn and Manhattan, if I had to take a guess, I would say that a lot of people are leaving this particular area of Bushwick and might be moving to other places like Queens or on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And I want to see if that's kind of true. And there's also a bit of construction that's happening in this area. So, new sidewalks being built or new buildings going up. So that might have a factor in what's happening. I'm going to unfilter all of my points for right now. I want to bring this into view here. I'm going to make a drive time analysis using our Find Nearby tool to hopefully find a pattern or something in particular about this area. Now, 3 minutes should do it, and you're saying to yourself, with 3 minutes, you can't really get a lot of places in 3 minutes. But in New York, especially in Brooklyn and Manhattan, 3 minutes is a huge amount of time. And I think that'll give us a bit of information about what's happening probably in the surrounding areas here. So I've clicked on our map tools icon. We're going to come down to the Find Nearby widget. Going to make a selection. I'm going to just use these 4 fair points here. We'll change our search area to drive time, knock it down to 3 minutes. Click OK. There we go. 3 minutes gets you a lot of places in Bushwick. I'm going to just style this a little bit so I can see my points a bit more because there are some overlaps there. I'll bring the transparency down just a little bit, and there we go. We can see a couple different buffer layers here from each point. If you were to start at each one, these represent each one of those starting points. Maybe, I don't know. Do I like this color? Yeah, I think this color is okay. Maybe we'll change it to a red outline here. Maybe bring up the thickness just a little bit. I guess purple should be okay. Well, maybe we'll change it to blue. I always have a hard time choosing what colors I like for my map. But at any rate, we can still see that these buffer layers are playing a role. And what it seems to me, I'm going to just close this window here, is that the further away we get from these 4 points, the likelihood of having good trees appears to start to take shape. I mean, the further northeast we go, it looks like we have some more poor trees, but the further south we go, southwest, it looks like the good trees are full abundance. However, I think we can enhance this a bit more if we use a reference layer. It'll give us some context to what we're actually seeing and what we're looking at. So what we'll do is come back to our analytic tools, click on our reference layer icon, and I'm going to use this 2016 to 2021 population growth reference layer. And what I'm looking for is a change, a negative change in the population within this particular area. So let's take a look at what these results or the reference layer is actually showing. I'm going to just close out of our reference layer widget for the time being, and I really want to focus on this area first and then move away and see if there's any patterns. So I'm going to click in this area here. And there we see. Current population here is 638, and it's estimated to be 602 in 2021. The estimated annual rate of change is minus 1.1%. Interesting. So there is definitely a decrease in the amount of people that are living here. There might be some new buildings that are coming up, or in general, the area is maybe just not as good as it was before. Maybe these buildings are becoming dilapidated over time. What happens if we go a bit further south here? Same thing. Looks like we're having a small rate of change. Now, it's not nearly as big as 1.1%, but there still is a negative change here. What about this area? And now the annual rate of change is actually supposed to increase by 2% in 2021. So I think we may have solved our mystery here about why this particular area of Bushwick is seeing an increase of trees that are in fair status and maybe eventually even in poor status. So let's go back to our report, and I can still filter this here. We'll filter our fair trees. I want to see if there's any other patterns that I can look for. What about this area of Brooklyn? Oh, there's a small rate of change. What about down here? And a small rate of change. So it seems that the further away you get from these 4 points, the change, whether it's positive or negative, is minimal, but there are changes. So perhaps the disturbance of these changes, whether it's construction or people leaving, not taking enough time to keep the trees maintained, is causing this to happen.
Thank you, Anthony. That was very well done. So just to summarize what we saw, ArcGIS for Power BI is a name change. We have a new licensing model. Creator and above can go ahead and design reports. Everybody else can view the reports. Support for the Power BI report server is now there in connected environments. So we do need to connect to the internet to load in the visual. Layer joins are extremely powerful in how we can take data from ArcGIS and bind it with data in Power BI based on a common attribute. And then embedding reports and publish to web is supported with lat-long or XY data only. Again, this is in our initial release, and we're looking to iterate on this in future releases. But let's talk about this for just a minute. When we spoke about what I get access to with my Microsoft 365 account, we talked about all the business applications. But the one thing that we haven't talked about in detail yet is the Power Platform. So just showing a little preview of what's to come, we know that ArcGIS for Power BI is one of the applications that's part of the Power Platform. but we do have work coming in the future with Power Apps and Power Automate. With ArcGIS for Power Platform, which is a work that we're progressing in 2021, you will see new connectors that will be available to other Esri location services that you can go ahead and add or work with within Power Apps, which is a low-code experience to building custom applications. Now, if you're anxious to go ahead and get started and see how some of these connectors with ArcGIS work within the Power Platform, you can go into Power Automate and do a search for some connectors, and there's some Survey 123 connectors that are available now. Some of these connectors, for example, every time a survey is filled out, send me an email. Every time a survey is filled out, send it to ArcGIS Online or update a response in SharePoint. So there's some very, very powerful things that we're going to be able to do here as we start to tie into the rest of our location services and look at things like drive times and routing and enrichment and being able to geocode data as it comes in, or again, enriching on the fly. And it's all of those capabilities that surface within the Power App environment that makes it really easy for somebody to go ahead and build some of these custom applications that integrate across their enterprise to the other Microsoft 365 users within their organization. So thank you again for your time today. We hope you found this session informative, and we look forward to hearing your questions. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for attending our session today. And here's where we're going to go ahead and kick off some of our live Q&A. Anthony and I and Art have been answering some of your questions as they've come in through the chat, but here we are now to just talk about some of them more in detail. One of the first ones that came up that people were asking, Anthony, you mentioned this one. Does Power BI use credits? How many credits for an infographic? How many credits if I'm address matching? Do you want to talk about that for just a second?
Sure. Yeah. So in ArcGIS for Power BI, there are no credits that are consumed, which is probably music to everybody's ears. Even when you're signed in with your ArcGIS account, whether it's online or enterprise, there are no credits consumed. So drive times, infographics, geocoding, nothing is consumed there. So hopefully that that makes everybody a bit more happy of hearing that.
Yeah. And then another popular question too, and obviously this was a big one, but was the licensing change. Hey, we have this in 10.9 going forward, you just need a Creator Plus and you can design reports. ArcGIS Online right now, Creator Plus, go design reports, you're good to go. But questions, or I think some confusion came in when we're retrofitting some of these older implementations of enterprise. At 10.8, we still needed the add-on license. Somebody was saying, why do I need to, need to go get that? And then at 10.7, I didn't need it, but it still works a little bit. And, and I'll just kind of answer this or keep talking, and Anthony can jump in if you'd like. But, part of it is an engineering decision. So on these older vintages of enterprise, it's less risky. It's a lot easier to say, hey, we'll just get the license file. We'll issue it to you. It's going to be self-service in my Esri very soon. But a lot easier just to update that license file than it is to go patch your servers and change everything local to that install. So we wanted to take the path that was less aggressive and easier for everybody to implement. So I think that was a key one there. Anthony, we also saw questions, we do a lot of demo showing points, but do you want to talk a little bit about support with polygons and lines?
Sure. Yeah. So that the question came a bit, and I think part of my demo had a number of points in there. But out of the box, we do support polygons, so administrative boundaries. So if you're in the United States, for example, we support things like zip codes or states, census tracts. We even support international boundaries as well. So different postcode levels, like in the UK or Australia, prefecture levels, districts, etc. Polylines out of the box at the moment is currently not supported. However, if you have, say, a feature layer or reference layer from your organization, you can bring that in and you can interact with those polylines. In a future release, we want to support polylines out of the box. That way we'll have a nice spectrum of different layer types or points and things like that. So
yeah. There's also some questions about being able to report on data coming from a feature service. You know, hey, is this possible? I think we saw maybe 4 or 5 on that. It's something that the team's actively working on, and we're hoping to deliver later this year, is that you can go ahead and add your feature layer into ArcGIS for Power BI as you're designing your report. And then great, you know, we can start to figure out how do we want to do some other visuals using that data coming from the feature service and how we might refresh that and work forward with it. So, so a little bit of talk on styling. Anthony, did you have another one in there that maybe jumped out at you?
Yeah, there was a few that I saw come through about, and I think this might be done at the end, but there was a few questions about if they can obtain the slides or the presentation. I replied to a few of those questions with a link for that. So I think at the end of this we'll see that. But I know there were a few questions in there about the slides and the presentation. And then just a few other things. We're making some enhancements in an upcoming release. There were questions about, by X and Y, do you mean Latin long, or by Latin long, do you mean X and Y? And the answer to that is yes. So in an upcoming release, we've kind of highlighted some of these areas that makes it a bit more user-friendly, or if you're not familiar with GIS and things of that nature, we're taking a lot of that into account so that it's easy for you to dive right in and make a map without having to know all the crazy terminology in the GIS world.
And then also too, you know, we put a poll out towards the end here talking about, you know, what do you want to learn more about next? Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps. Pretty good response showing up for Automate, just moved up a little bit more. And Power Apps. And with us today is our CTO of Location Analytics, Art Haddad. Art, do you want to share a little bit more about the vision that we have and how we're going to continue forward with Power Automate and the Power Platform?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for asking. There's been a lot of interest in a no-coding experience and automation of workflows. And one of the things that Esri wants to do is support these opportunities by actually creating a number of different actions and recipes that take advantage of a number of different things. For example, geocoding, address matching, both single line, multi-line, routing and directions, data enrichment with demographic information, otherwise to the ArcGIS world known as geo-enrichment. We're adding additional capabilities like moving data into an ArcGIS feature layer or from an ArcGIS feature layer. For example, there are some questions there about how do I bring my ArcGIS data and use it within my Power BI report to create a number of different visualizations, not just the map. Well, that's one of the things that we're looking at, and a number of others. We're currently listening and talking with customers to find out all the details as to what people are looking for in Power Automate. I noticed one question in there was about making use of GP services in Power Automate. Things like that are what we would like to hear in order to better plan our future with Power Automate. So those 5 actions and a number of recipes around those, as well as a mapping component in the Power Apps framework. So it'll be a Power component that you can add to your Power App. The data that you geo-enable through these actions in Power Automate can definitely be used in a Power App configured report, and away you go. So that's where we're starting, and there's a number of other things that we want to be able to do, but you know, we're more into the crawl, walk, run style of life as opposed to boil the ocean style. So we'll start small and we'll add based on need and feedback, and of course, vision and direction that we have internally. Hope that answers it, Andrew.
Yeah, that was perfect. And it's a really exciting topic in time at Esri that we're working with Power Platform and how we're integrating our location services and with this larger framework. So really, really fun and exciting stuff to work on. Anthony, I think there was something that you saw on some of the different user limits in there. If you want to go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, there was a lot of different questions about different geocoding limits and how much you can add to the map. So just a kind of a quick overview in case you don't get to see the slides again. Out of the box, if you don't sign in with any ArcGIS identity, whether it's online or enterprise, you can geocode up to 3,500 points. If you sign in with your ArcGIS identity, it's up to 10,000. And for Latin long, X and Y, it's up to 30,000 for both types, whether it's a standard user or an ArcGIS user. There are some limits on polygons. It's 10,000 and 15,000 being added to the map. And those were kind of set up in conjunction with Microsoft just to make sure we're not breaking Power BI in general and things like that. So just wanted to touch base on that again, because there were a couple of questions in there about geocoding limits.
Yeah. All right. So there was, a couple questions too about layer joins. So, what happens when I style it or join some data over, can I style it? And, we responded to a few of them in here, but, when we add in the layer to join, we style that before it's brought over, and then we have some data that we want to join to it. So in some cases, we've seen, like in the utility space, we're adding lines, and then we want to do that layer join. And then if we click on the line, we can actually get some information about, how is the line being, what is the electricity, or what is the stats about this line that's in its production. So different things like that. It doesn't change on the values brought into Power BI. It's still pre-rendered, but I think that's something a lot of people have asked about, is if we bring our own data and want to join to custom features, so lines or polygons, we want to be able to style that in the map. I think that's a really good one. And as you have these different ideas, you want to give feedback to the team, and we highly encourage you to log them in the Esri community. And we have a great page set up for Power BI. We're actively monitoring, looking for enhancement requests, answering to forum posts. Anything you want to throw at us outside of this presentation, we'll be there to answer.
Andrew, I had another one that was a common question. What does creator plus mean? That was just an easier way for us to say a creator level or higher. So when you're a report designer, you have to make sure that if you're using an ArcGIS online or enterprise account, it has to be creator level or higher. And then when you're viewing those reports, it's viewer level or higher.
Yeah, and then there's, just a few questions too. Hey, can I do batch geocoding? I want to get the XY. What do I do? We explain this one, and one of the answers, in case everybody didn't get a chance to read it, but we're very transient in this. When we get the data, we load it in there. We're not storing anything. But if you did want to store those values locally, you go ahead and actually geocode that data using the ArcGIS Online Geocoding service, the same service that we're using behind the scenes. And that's one way that you can go ahead and get your XY data and pull that back down.
Hey, Andrew, there's a question that just came in. I'll read it verbatim. I know it's a different product, but while you are working with Microsoft, are there any plans for MS Dynamics integration?
So take a sip of water.
Sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we've been looking at this. Art specifically has been doing some good work, taking a look at what's going on with Dynamics. And we can leverage the cookbook and recipes that we'll have for the Power Platform to integrate in with Dynamics, and that's where we can even bring in a common mapping component, so it'll look very similar to the map you'll see in Esri Maps for Office, or ArcGIS for Office, ArcGIS for SharePoint, and ArcGIS for Power BI. So we'll have a very consistent look and feel across all of the integrations going forward. But yeah, great question.
Yeah, definitely. And it's 11:15.
Yeah, I think that's going to take us to the top here. So I appreciate it. And if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, feel free to go ahead and post it in the Esri community, and we'll reach out to you.